Cameras are on.
Thank you. Good morning. Welcome to the New York City Retirement System Common Investment Meeting for March 21st, 2018. Let me just briefly go over our schedule. We are going to call to order the meeting and the boards, and then we are going to ask for motions to go into executive session so that the managers who've come to present to us can do their presentations. Some of them are from out of town, and they're going to try to get out of town before the snow gets really bad. And then we will go back into public session up here to do the public agenda. And then we'll break for lunch and go downstairs to do our system caucuses. Okay? So with that, I will ask for the roll calls. And let me just note before we do that the teachers' retirement system is not here today. The schools are canceled due to the snow, so this will not be a meeting of the teachers' retirement system board. Okay, so let's start with NYSERS. Melanie, could you please call the roll? Right, and just use your mic. I don't think it's on. John Adler.
David Jetter for Controller, Scott Stringer.
Public Advocate's Office.
Who we couldn't hear your name. Okay, let me just make a note. The mics are not working, evidently, on that side of the room.
Hello? Hello?
Yeah. Okay, so if someone can, if folks could just speak up, and then if someone from staff could come seek to address that problem. So just speak up over there, guys. So Larry, could you repeat your name?
Larry Schimmel, representing Public Advocate Tish James.
Thank you.
Borough President Manhattan. Borough President Brooklyn. Borough President Bronx. Borough President Queens.
Angelina Martinez for Queens Borough President.
Queens is open, all right.
Yay.
International Brotherhood of Teamsters. It's on now.
Stryker, present.
Transport Workers Union.
David Katzman, present.
District Council 37. Robin Roach.
Henry Garrido.
We have a quorum.
And Henry Garrido, I'm on the phone.
Oh, yeah, Henry Garrido on the phone. Thanks. So Henry is not present for quorum purposes. However, District Council 37?
Robin Roach.
Robin Roach. So District Council 37 is present for quorum purposes. Thank you. Let me just note that folks who are on the phone should announce your presence, but you're not in attendance for quorum purposes or for votes. Okay, thank you, NYSERS. Let's move to police.
Good morning. Representing the PBA.
Joel Alejandro, representing Patrick Lynch, Mubarak Abdul-Jabbar, John Puglisi, and also representing the backbone of a department that never closes all year round, 365 days.
Merritt Riley from the PBA.
Michael Palladino, DPA.
Riley representing the SBA. Lou Turco, LBA.
Roy Richter, CEA.
Commissioner of Finance.
Antonio Rodriguez, designee for Commissioner Jiha.
Mayor's Office.
John Adler, designee for Mayor Bill de Blasio.
Comptroller.
John Dorsett, designee for Controller Scott Stringer.
And the Police Commissioner.
Stephanie Zimberg for Police Commissioner O'Neill.
We have a quorum.
Thank you, Kevin. Full attendance, John Dorsett would like to point out. Okay, fire.
Always.
Pat.
For the mayor? For the mayor?
Cynthia Collins for Mayor Bill de Blasio.
For the controller?
John Dorsett for Controller Scott Stringer.
For Department of Finance?
Phil Dukes for Commissioner Jacques Jiha.
For the UFA?
Pete DeVita for the Fire Department.
Okay, I'll go individually then, Pete. For Gerard Fitzgerald?
Gerard Fitzgerald and Leroy McGinnis and Eddie Brown are dialed in on the meeting.
Okay. John Kelly and...
John Kelly is also here.
Okay, great. Mr. Jack Kelty for the UFOA? Here. Mr. John Farina for the UFOA?
Here.
Mr. Paul Mannix?
Here.
And for the Fire Commissioner, Terrell Brown?
Terrell Brown for the Fire Commissioner.
We have a quorum, John.
Excuse me, everybody. Can we just get a moment of silence for the passing of our FDNY brother, Thomas Fallon? Passed away a few days ago. Thank you very much, guys. Tommy loved his job. I stepped in for him. I'm going to do my best to represent him, and if you guys can help me along the way, I'm sure I'm going to need it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Pete, and thanks for leading that moment of silence for Tommy. I think all of us join in offering our condolences to his family and to the entire fire department on his loss, and I know everyone here is going to miss his insights and his humor. Thanks. Okay,
Gerard Fitzgerald from the UFA is on the phone.
Thank you, Gerard. Is there anybody else from Fire Pension Fund Board on the phone that didn't identify themselves already? Okay, great. Thank you.
John Kelly Brown.
Yeah, we got it. Okay. Thank you. Okay, and then for Burrs,
Morning, Mr. Adler.
good morning,
We're
Mr. Rich.
represented here by our Vice Chairman, Raymond Orlando. If there's anyone on the phone, please let us know. We do not have a quorum. We will administer this business at our next regular board meeting. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And let me just ask, is there anybody from the teachers' retirement system on the phone? Okay.
Susan Stang from staff is listening in.
Thank you, Susan.
I don't know if I count, so I don't know if we're asking.
Well, you count enormously, but not for quorum purposes. Okay, thank you very much. All right, so now, as I said in the opening, we're going to move into executive session to hear manager presentations. So can I get a motion from the NYSERS board to move into executive session? Thank you, Pat. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Larry. Any discussion? All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please say nay. Was that a nay? No. Okay. Any abstentions? Great. Motion carries. For police, is there a motion to move into executive session?
PBA makes a motion.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor of the motion to move into executive session at police, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please say nay. Any abstentions? And then for fire, is there a motion to move into executive session?
So moved.
Thank you. Second moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor of the motion at fire to move into executive session, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please say nay.
Aye.
Okay. Any abstentions?
Sounds like you got a 2-second delay.
Yeah, right. Okay. Thank you. Okay, motion carries. So we're now in executive session, and let me ask. Burrs is not in session. Okay, cameras are on. Great. Okay, next item on our public agenda is report from Bolton Partners on the actuarial audit. So, guys, come to the podium. Please introduce yourselves for the record, and then the floor is yours.
Okay. Hi, my name is Tom Lohman. I'm one of the actuaries from Bolton Partners. And with me is Colin England. We're just going to take just a few minutes here to go over a presentation that we have. I guess this moves the slides.
Before you begin, I know there's other materials that are available, and the PBA requests that we get copies of those materials to review. Those are listed.
Joe, is that the audit report?
Not only on the page 3 of the actual document here, but the other documents that are separate. I don't believe they're contained therein. Right. We'd like copies of those.
Is that okay?
I believe we sent you copies of those.
They went to the pension systems. I don't know if
Yeah, we don't have them.
I think they're on the they're on the controller's office.
It'd be easier
system,
if we
too.
have them in PDF,
Okay,
but if you don't
yeah.
have a PDF,
We'll get them to you.
I'd appreciate that. Thank you very much.
No problem, Joe. My pleasure.
And how easy it is and pleasant it is when you make a nice request and you get cooperation. Thank you.
We know you like information.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. So I'm very, very quick here. We had 3 parts of the study that we did. The first part was the evaluation work, which is replicating the work that Sherry's office did for the evaluation. The second part was the larger part, which is the experience study, looking at the plan's experience, mortality rates, retirement rates, things like that. And the third part was the administrative review, looking at sort of transferring of data between the plans and the Office of the Actuary. As far as documents today, what I'm doing is the PowerPoint, but as was just discussed, there are documents out there, are these big, thick reports. And you've got really 4 thick reports. One is the replication finding, matching the evaluation results. One is the experience study, which comes in 2 flavors, the short version, this big binder here, and the 1,000-page version. And there's also the administrative review and then also an independent actuary statement. So you have big documents and all these things, but we're just going to summarize them today. In terms of the replication work, these are the key numbers. I know they're sort of small on the screen, but basically what we did was we took the 2014 valuation. We programmed it ourselves for each of the 5 plans, and this is a summary of the results. The initials PVFB refer to the present value of future benefits, and we show the OA's results, and we show our results, like the first one is NYSER's. So their valuation results were a liability of about $90 billion. We also get $90 billion. We were different by about 0.35%. Our tolerance limit for that was within 4%. We were well within tolerances for everything. So the 2 things we're showing on this summary chart are simply how close were we to the present value future benefits and how close were we on the actual contribution, which is sort of leveraged. So you'll see that it'll be a little bit different as a percent. In total, though, we're well within 1% on the present value future benefits, the liability side, and on the contributions. There's a lot more detail in the reports with a lot more sort of subcategories of results. In terms of the replication work itself, the key findings, the key results is, again, we were close on all 5 systems in matching the Office of the Actuary's numbers. There was an issue we raised about the TRS or BRRS 403B plans, TDA plans, where some of the accounts are credited with 8.25%, which is above the expected return on the assets. And we recommended that this sort of be pre-funded, that since you're only going to expect to earn 7, but you're crediting more than 7, that difference is an expected cost and should be added to the city's contribution, which I understand that recommendation sort of been put into play now. There's some issues with the firefighter overtime assumptions. The experience is not matching the assumptions that well. That'll be covered more in the experience study. And then there's something called the lag method. So you're doing evaluation in 14, determine a fiscal year 16 cost, and how do you move those results forward? And we talked about how the lag method could be improved. On the next slide, there are a lot of little small issues. One was the prior audit actuary, GRS, recommended that all plans should have valuation reports. Some currently do, but we agreed that should happen for all the plans. There was a small issue with the VSF and some of the plans and how it offsets for escalation benefits, which is like a COLA for some of the plans. That needs to sort of be aligned. And then there were some sort of minor recommendations and minor issues, all of which are covered in detail in the larger report. But again, we only have a few minutes, so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Colin to talk about the experience study. Just going to leave those there.
Now, the first and most obvious question is, why do you care about the experience study?
That's the question that was at the top of my mind.
I figured that. And it's not just because our report is 1,200 pages long. It's because the experience study is what gives you faith that the actual assumptions that they're making as to when people will die, when people will retire, are accurately fitted to the data of what has really happened. Because you want your assumptions to represent what reality is likely to be. So that's why we do an experience study. What did we do? We reviewed lots and lots of assumptions, created hundreds of tables analyzing how experience compared to what the assumptions were. We looked into the economic assumptions as well. We'll talk about that in a moment. And where we concluded after the end of all this analysis is that we're not recommending at this moment any changes to any of the assumptions. Now, part of this is that we started with this being phase 1 of the project, we're looking at things that are so far off and important to the cost that we would feel a need to recommend a change now or suggest a change now. There's nothing that's that far off. We did make some suggestions about changes in how this is done in total, and we came up with the use of confidence intervals as well to analyze how far off the assumptions are. So 2 years from now, we come back, we talk to you about this again. We're going to be talking more about why we're suggesting changes in assumptions. And an important factor will be that we're 95% certain that the assumption is not accurate. Okay, moving on to the next page, which I will get to as soon as I figure out how to use this. That obviously is not the right way. Okay, so we're actuaries, we got to have cool tables, colors, you know, all kinds of things. What this does is summarize the results of our analysis. Things that are on the far right that say significant or very significant are the assumptions that have an impact on the liabilities and the contributions. And the U's mean it looks like things are right in sync. We're not likely to suggest changes. The reds are things that are likely to be a change that would increase the cost, and L stands for we're likely to look at changing that. M stands for maybe, maybe not, who knows. Depends on what we see in the next 2 years. This first page was just for the different parts of NYSERS. This is for the other 4 plans, so for those from the police group, this is the one you care about more. And, you know, feel free to look at this. There's hundreds of pages backing each of these, so if you want more detail, go to those. I'm going to sort of skip over that, then go on to this next page that talks about things that we saw that are patterns, where we see change that could affect all of the plans. Well, the assumption and investment return, the inflation and investment return assumptions are sort of the critical ones there. And where we came down is that your assumption is likely a little on the conservative side, not terribly aggressive, when you compare it to other jurisdictions and when you compare it to what your investment managers think they will earn. Your inflation assumption is probably a hair high. Your investment assumption's probably right in there, maybe a hair high, maybe a hair low. Predicting the future is, of course, an uncertain game. But it looks, you know, they both look reasonable and a little on the conservative side. Conservative means overstating liabilities resulting in higher contributions that might be necessary. Actuaries,
in other words, you might recommend reducing the contributions.
Well, that's possible, but
Okay.
that really goes against the grain of actuaries. We want things well funded. We don't want things there's a 30% chance of it collapsing 50 years out.
But what it sounds like you're saying is you would not, at this point, you would not be thinking of recommending lowering the assumed interest rate.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Unless we did that in combination with lowering the inflation assumption.
So when you say on the conservative side, is that like the recommended? You mean actually recommended side? Or is
Yes,
that conservative?
actuaries like conservative.
Okay.
If
So
you
you're
look nationally at other states, large cities, large counties, the median rate that is being used is around 7.5%. So you are 50 basis points below that.
Yeah.
Now, if you compare that to what your investment advisors think they will earn based on the mix of assets in the various plans, they're right around 7%, a hair above, a hair below, depending on which group of investment advisors. So you're in sync with your investment advisors, you're conservative compared to other jurisdictions, and it's always very difficult for us to get investment advisors to tell us what they think investment returns will be over the next 30 years, because 10 to 20 is as far out as they ever want to go. Right. So it may be that you're still a little conservative in that area.
So usually when you say conservative, it means that you should be more moderate. But you're saying conservative is
I'm
what
saying
the
conservative is generally better
Okay.
than aggressive. Aggressive is where you end up in the ditch 20 years from now, where you don't want to be.
And let me just ask one more question about your thing about inflation, that we may have been overestimating inflation. And that, obviously we've just come through a period of extremely low, historically low interest rates.
That's right.
But now we are coming out of that period, apparently, because interest rates have been rising. And probably, we heard earlier today that are probably going to continue to rise actually in about an hour or so. So would that,
an hour?
well, at 2 o'clock, the Fed is supposed to make an announcement. But my question about that is that when you look at the experience vis-a-vis inflation, do you take into account the fact that the current experience, inflation is increasing, as opposed to looking at, say, the last 10 years when we've had these historically low interest rates?
We're doing a combination of both.
Okay, great. That's all I
Looking
wanted
at
to
the
know.
historical information, but looking at the last 10 or 15 years of historical information, you would say we're way high.
Yeah.
And that's not necessarily reasonable, because if you go back 50 or more years, you see a different pattern.
Thank you.
Did you want to?
So that's what I wanted to ask. So I want to be clear. Very conservative would be 7% or less?
No.
I'm trying to get a sense as to where we're talking about here.
Very conservative would be 6.5.
6.5.
6.25.
And very aggressive would be
8. 8.5.
Okay. But if you look, and again, depending on the window you're observing, right, maybe 8 is not that aggressive if you have a long-term period that you're looking at, rather than a 10-year period.
Can I jump in?
Sure.
Okay. Yeah.
He tag teamed out. Okay, I just want to make sure.
Tag.
There you go.
I really don't want to leave the impression that we might not recommend lowering the rate. We might very well recommend lowering the rate. I would be
No,
very,
I'm not arguing about strategy. I'm just trying to get a sense of the argument here.
I don't have any of my plans at 8. I think, as Colin said before, if you look at surveys, they're often at 7.5, but they're coming down gradually. The only reason you see a lot of plans at 8 isn't because they're trying to be aggressive. I think they're just having a hard time getting the rate down and trying to afford it. I think it's just probably the wrong rate. So I think 8's very, very aggressive. I think 7 is about right. But again, I think we need to give us some space to get the second part of the study done without committing us to give a recommendation that exactly where we're going to be.
No, I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just, again, as so I could understand. So you're looking at let's say a 10-year window. You've just said you're not looking beyond that. It could change the entire story for you if you had a longer-term window that you would be looking at. It could change your ideas of where the assumption rate could be, or should be.
Again, I'll turn over to Colin, tag team in a second here, but let me just make the comment that
He wants a tag team in big time now.
I can tell. But again, we look at different sort of time horizons, and quite often investment advisors like to go out 7 to 10 years, because if you start going out 30 years, you can almost make it whatever you want it to be, because no one really knows that well.
No, again, I'm not disagreeing. If you go back to like 1930, maybe the recommendation will be different here. I'm not saying it is. I'm just saying that based on the 10-year period that you're talking about, you're saying 7 is about right.
Well,
but if it was a longer window, it would be different.
We're looking more for the discount rate at the next 10 years expectations, not the last 10 years. The other assumptions, we're looking more backward looking. For this particular assumption, while we look at the past, we're really focused on expectations on the future.
Right. But expectations can be different than reality. So
they will be, by definition. All of Sherry's assumptions will be wrong, probably. But hopefully they're
well, the PBA sometimes agrees with that, but that's the problem.
Doesn't mean they're wrong. It just means that
I just like to call them Nostradamus-like prognostications. They could all change by tomorrow, but.
Okay, well, anyway, I just wanted, again, I'll tag team back to Colin, but I want to say, give us some space to make recommendations. Don't assume the cost is going to go up or down when we do the next experience study. We'll give you the rationale for recommendations next phase.
And back to, we are looking more at 30-year time horizons. What we're telling you is that I'm taking stuff from investment advisors that are 5 or 10 or 20-year and looking at those and saying we ought to be a hair higher than that, because we know they're looking at a shorter time frame. Okay. Now I am on the wrong page. The other thing that is significant is a demographic assumption, and that is related to mortality. And mortality in your plan has been historically studied looking at an average of how long people live without weighting that for the size of the benefit. But the size of the liabilities is heavily tied to the size of the benefits. So that's a revision that we're going to make in the next analysis. It sounds like a very technical thing, but it's likely to result in effectively a lower assumed rate of mortality, a higher expected lifespan for folks. Moving on. As I said a few minutes ago, we're not suggesting any revisions at this point. We list here a lot of things that we'll look at more closely in the next study, and that's about it for exciting things. Look out for the next study. It will be a top seller, I'm sure.
Any questions for the Bolton partners?
Well, we have one other section to talk about.
Sorry. I thought.
Just one
excited.
question. You mentioned the 1,100-page document that you're giving me the summary of. Is that on Convene? Is that where you?
No.
Rosa,
No, this-
where is our
yeah.
1,200-page document?
Copies was sent to the executive.
You got to go to the microphone. Sorry.
Yeah, so this isn't a real investment sim item. This is just, what we have to do every year in terms of the,
I got it.
Bolton making this presentation. We just thought it would be more expeditious.
If I can
to
get a
do it
copy,
here.
that'd be great.
We send copies to the executive directors of each systems.
Yeah, and
So we'll reach out to them and ask them.
yeah, Joe asked too, so we want to make sure you guys get the information.
It's also on our website.
Oh, it's on your website too?
Yes, the PDF copy.
John Dorsa will circulate the links.
Log in a specific way to get the paper documents?
No, it's totally transparent, and all the public is able to access it.
I like that. Thank you very much. I appreciate the controller's attitude towards information.
And you want to read the last 800 pages because it'll get you to sleep much quicker.
I will try that as soon as possible.
Let me know. Okay, the third part of our study was the administrative review, and this is in some ways the most important part because it's really critical that the actuaries have the right participant data to do their valuations. The old concept of garbage in, garbage out. This is the make sure that the actuaries don't get garbage. And the answer is that things are going very well. I'm going to skip what's on here, but the data that is getting to the actuaries is adequate. It's representative of what's going on. We did have a few suggestions for improvements, but they were in the nature of safety kind of issues or efficiency kind of issues. The one that comes immediately to mind is one group was messaging over benefit calculation requests to the Office of the Actuary. In the modern era, we could use messengers, but there are electronic methods of transferring information that would be every bit as accurate and somewhat less expensive, and you don't risk any messengers having their bikes run over. And that's about everything I was going to say. Tom, I think, is going to come back and wrap up. He's tagged.
Probably over our time, so again, I just want to thank the Controller's Office and the Office of the Actuary and the retirement boards for helping us get this study done. And we're on to part 2.
Part 2. When does this report happen for the second engagement?
Probably in about a year, I would think we would be done. We've already started the replication work and the experience study work because the first part got done pretty efficiently.
Great, thanks. Any other questions for Bolton? Sherry, you want to comment? Introduce yourself for the record, please.
I'm Sherry Chan, Chief Actuary for the City of New York. So thank you for still being here. I think the only people that are more eager to sit through an actual presentation are probably the actuaries at a conference looking for CE credits. So pat yourself on the back. I do want to say also thank you to Bolton Partners. They painstakingly comb through my work and my office's work. If you talk to them or read any of their emails, they might think that it's more passionately combing through it than painstakingly, so I do want to say thank you. I want to also give the board an update a progress update on some of these items that Bolton Partners had identified. And I'm just going to, for the interest of time, I'm just going to go through their presentation really quickly. On this slide right here, what I want to point out is for the TDA for teachers and BERS, this was brought up by Tom. There is a difference in the assumption. There is a delta between the assumption and the actual credit that is made for the TDA funds. So instead of recognizing this in hindsight and amortizing it over 15 years, I am bringing it forward and recognizing it on an annual basis. So this is part of the annual contribution going forward from now on. And you might have read in the press this dollar amount. It amounted to $50 million on an annual basis for both teachers and BERS.
Is 50 a piece or 50 total?
Total.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay.
40 and 10. And the second item here, I just want to address the firefighters' overtime. It was during a period where we had the hiring freeze. So because of the lack of new entries into the department, we had to rely on the current population. So it did increase the overtime, the number of hours that they worked. We're taking this into consideration. This also spanned the time of Sandy, Superstorm Sandy, so there was some overtime due to that. And we're going to, as Tom said, we're going to look a little bit, a couple more years of data to really assess it before we make any changes. The lag methodology was already changed for this year's contribution. The letters went out to all 5 boards, and that was incorporated. On the next slide, the valuation reports, they are drafted. I asked my staff to draft them based on some of my recommendations of how to change it. They are sitting on my desk right now, and as long as I'm not sitting in a sim or any of the 5 other board meetings or preparing board material for these meetings or churning out fiscal notes, I will get to it right away, and they will be issued. The VSF, based on a chronological interpretation of the law, there is an interpretation that the escalation should be, the offset should be in there for the VSF escalation. But we did consult with the law department, and based on that, I did change it a little bit, and that offset is not in there anymore for the valuation purposes. And the amount for all 9 VSF funds for the 3 retirement system amounted to approximately $6 million. Then the last item on the list was the TDA annuity load. There was a rebalancing that occurred a couple years ago, and we are doing that on an annual basis going forward. And because of that, I reviewed the loads. We adjusted the loads. I adjusted the loads for this fiscal year, and that amounted to a $290 million gain for the system, and that is incorporated already. And then lastly, on this slide, I just wanted to, the next slide. On this slide, I just wanted to point out that, we're looking at the data a little bit more. There is, Tom had already spoken about the overtime, and we addressed that already. But there are other issues that we want to dig into further before we make any changes to the assumptions. One of which, BERS was going through a update to their data, for example, and we were able to get better data this year, especially for the part-timers. That caused a gain for the system. That's another good source of news. And because of just a lot of moving pieces right now, we want to kind of assess it and let the dust settle a little bit before we make any changes. But I do want to give you a heads up that for the economic assumption, for the CPI, the investment return assumption, that if there is a change, this is one of the biggest pieces and has the biggest sensitivity. The liabilities have the biggest sensitivity based on this assumption, as well as the mortality. So that's just a heads up. And I'm going to end on this note, which is the first paragraph underneath the bullet points. I just want everybody to give themselves a pat on the back. We are doing a really good job in servicing our members, and I don't think there's any big red flags right now, so thank you. Are there any questions? All right.
Thank you. Oh, is there a question? No. Okay. Yes. Oh, who's got it? John, you got a question?
No, I said good job and thank
okay.
you.
All right. Thank you, John. Okay, I think that concludes the actuarial report, the actuaries' presentations. Thank you, folks. Thank you for your work. Okay, so the next item on the agenda is the quarterly performance review. However, I have heard it whispered in my ear that there are those of folks at the table who wish to forego, just for today, the quarterly performance review, given the lateness of the hour and the weather, the frightening weather outside. Is it?
Yeah, so I think each system is just noting that they have received the quarterly investment reports and, reserve the right to ask BAM any questions or for clarification at a future date.
We were also going to talk about rebalancing and asset allocation. We can do that at the next SIM if you so wish.
Yes, we so
Yes,
wish.
we so wish.
So at the next SIM, we will have a presentation from BAM about tactical rebalancing and asset allocation review, and then the boards can discuss where to take that.
Yeah.
Okay? So I believe then that concludes the public agenda business for today. Those boards that have not yet caucused will still need to caucus. So I think we need to I think in the case of police, you guys
adjourn.
can do an adjournment.
Yes.
And then the other two boards need to go back into executive session. So let's just do that real quick, and then I think we're done up here.
So
let me start with
police would like to adjourn.
Is there a second? Any discussion? All in favor of the police board adjourning, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, please say nay. Any abstentions? Okay,
John,
motion carries.
could fire just caucus up here?
Their food is downstairs.
I think their food is downstairs.
The food is downstairs, and then you can just depart
You
from
can
downstairs.
caucus wherever you'd like. You can go out into the plaza and caucus if you'd like. But also, I think your stenographer is downstairs.
Yeah, and so
hold on,
fire,
hold on.
before you go, you need to go into executive session.
Right. So at fire, is there a motion to exit public session and go into executive session?
Motion to exit public session, go into executive.
Is there a second? Okay, motion made and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please say nay. Any abstentions? Okay, motion carries. Nicers, is there a motion to exit executive
So
session?
moved.
Second.
Okay, motion made and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor of the motion, please say aye. All opposed, please say nay. Any abstentions? Motion carries. Okay, that concludes our public
Mikhail,
agenda.
please turn off the cameras.